All right, today we're going to dive into Tesla and a $1 trillion valuation. That's right, I said 1 trillion. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. As you guys know, we've been covering a lot of blockchain technology over the past few months, obviously for a big reason. Bitcoin and Ethereum and all of its counterparts are on fly. But another sector that we really cover here on the show is electric vehicles and also just new innovation in technology. Joining me today is Taylor Ogan from Snowbull Capital, who is a great analyst on where technology, especially in the battery space, EV space, is going. Taylor, great to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Excellent. Taylor, let's jump into the obvious news this morning, which came with other obvious news with Tesla after Q3 earnings. And we'll kind of piece this apart because there's so many things to unpack here. First thing I want to get into is this situation with Hertz. Obviously, Hertz jumps in, says, hey, listen, we're going to go ahead out of bankruptcy. We're going to go ahead and order 100,000 Model 3s and repopulate our fleet with electric vehicles. The impact on this, obviously, Tesla hit a $1 trillion market cap for a short time today and is trading now at over $950 as of recording, which when I last looked on Friday, it was right around 910. So we've seen some pretty big moves in a very short time. Your thoughts on Hertz's impact, not only on Tesla, but on the global EV situation?
Yeah, every new EV on the road, of course, every additional EV on the road is going to be better. 100,000 though, that's a lot. And you see that kind of volume really only with Rivian's deal with Amazon, but that's over the course of
Right.
4 years, and that's also a specially made product just for Amazon. This is a product that exists right now, and so that's why it's easier for Tesla to kind of crank these out. I think that these will use the new LFP cells. It would make a lot of sense for them to.
Yep.
You're not going to see these. I think the ASP is going to come out to $42,000 across this whole fleet. But so you're just going to have the base Teslas. I doubt that they're going to have Autopilot or FSD, but the volume alone is obviously great. What's also good about this for Tesla is that this is really the first chance for Tesla to test out a fleet. Now it doesn't exactly have its hand directly in the honeypot here, but it has access to a lot of this fleet management data that it's going to collect over the next few years. And I think that's going to be really valuable to Tesla. The thing about this is that, is it worth a $90 billion pop? It wasn't baked into the valuation. And so it's one of the first new things, sudden things that Tesla investors have seen in quite some time. So it definitely came as a surprise to everyone. But I think that Tesla will do really well with this. I don't know if it's really necessarily worth $90 billion to its market cap, but no, it's a big deal for them, and obviously a big deal for Hertz. So I'm very excited about it, and clearly the market is too. The stock's up 8% right now.
Yeah. Looking at this story from Verge, Tesla briefly passes the 1 trillion after Hertz ordered the vehicles. I was looking here, and this is a $4.2 billion revenue injection into Tesla. So obviously we saw the boost. I haven't seen details come out yet of what the actual scenario is going to be on the order, like how would they handle, because Tesla has a little bit of a problem right now, and that's delivery. I'm trying to get a Tesla for my wife. It's just, getting one of these things is almost impossible. And then just the valuation, I was looking just the other day on my Model Y, I was blown away at what these cars are worth. This car is worth more than I paid for it a year ago. So how do they handle this kind of market pressure that's coming at them, both on supply chain, but also on the demand from the vehicle from the general population?
I think you can look at this in two different ways: a Tesla China and a Tesla United States. And what is happening at Fremont, they're really maxing out capacity there. They're going to have to tinker with the lines to figure out, do they want the higher margin S and X's? They're on different lines, but definitely some personnel shift around. So that may be a priority, and that may delay you getting your Model Y, for example. But I think for the rest of the world that is relying upon Gigafactory 3 in Shanghai, I think that that's a big opportunity for Tesla in those markets. That factory is cranking and cranking and cranking, doing very well. It's a highly automated, very high efficiency factory. Whereas GA1, GA2, GA3, GA4, like those lines at Fremont are, some of them are literally under a tenth. So I don't really expect those to be highly efficient compared to one of the most advanced new factories in the world, which is in Shanghai.
Yeah.
But I think that some of this has to do with, of course, the chip shortage. I think we're also going to see battery, not shortage, but the few out there that do make batteries are raising prices just this morning. I think we're going to see it with cattle within the month. So that's going to maybe, I mean, we're talking at the pack level going from, I don't know, maybe $88 per kilowatt hour to $100 per kilowatt hour. It's not a huge dent, but that was one of the allures of the LFP batteries. So if that, the raw materials for that, there are some supply chain constraints, not risks, so to speak, but that's going to have an impact. Now, are you going to see it as a consumer? Maybe not so much. I think that's going to be more Tesla's bottom line. That's going to see that. I don't think it's going to take a huge hit though. But it's something to keep in mind that these every part of these cars are highly sought after, especially right now.
Yeah, even parts for a Model Y or a Model 3. I've got a friend of mine who has a Model 3. He had, a fender bender, and just getting a part for the Model 3 is like many months out. So it definitely is a scenario on the demand in the ecosystem, or at least in the manufacturing supply chain. Well, okay, so there's a lot here. I want to go to this estimated delivery times because you're right. This is the U.S. Long range plus April 2020, previously March. Then long range, this was in early October, December, no change. And then performance, this was on Tesla Model 3. But if you go into Model Y, which has all been moved, or excuse me, Model S and Model X, those have now all been moved into September and June, I believe, of next year. Big, just to show you the historical and how fast they're changing delivery dates. This was just October 7th. Here we are, 3 weeks later, we already saw the big shift from Model X's getting pushed back a year into a September delivery. So you mentioned something there that kind of raised my ear, and that is maybe because of all the demand, do they shift away from manufacturing the Model Y, or excuse me, the Model X?
Yes. The Model X has always been the car that Tesla regrets ever making. It's a really cool car, but the complexity of making that vehicle compared to, let's say it takes 2.5 times more more hours or manpower to actually produce that vehicle, or parts, these crucial chips, especially even just little things for the Falcon Wing doors, for the infotainment in the back seat. Those are little things that they could just make a lot more Model Ys and Model 3s, just crank those out versus these more complex, even though they're higher margin vehicles. So I think that's what it's going to come down to. I don't know if it's really demand driving that as much, because we would see that reflected in the numbers and the volumes. But I think that the focus should be on just getting as many vehicles out the door as possible.
Right.
And especially the S and X are kind of older models that are playing in a market that's now seeing soon some competition. But as of right now, they're still dominant in that space. So I don't think there's a huge rush to get those out compared to maybe Model 3s and Model Ys, especially in the United States.
Yeah, obviously Model 3 and Y are continuing to see, ridiculous sales numbers worldwide. Elon was on record here basically saying just this last week that not to expect major deliveries coming out of Austin and Berlin. With that, I was surprised at that, even though, we kind of anticipated the slowdown obviously being October now, and Q3 numbers came out. Wasn't a big issue in the earnings call. What are your thoughts on those two factories coming to where they can get at least up to speed, where they can ramp and start manufacturing? When do you think that might happen?
Well, for both of those, the 4680 was kind of dependent on, well, those factors are dependent on the 4680. Now I think in a great way they've shifted, waiting for that 4680 to really become viable for sale. Instead, just focus on use the 2170s or even some of the CATL LFP packs, and just get those factories up and running. And I think that's what we've seen in the last 2 quarters, a shift towards that. But also these are very complex factories. I think it's okay if Tesla takes its time on getting these. There's no rush right now.
Yeah.
There's about to be a rush potentially, but again, Gigafactory 3 is doing really really well, and Fremont is kind of plateauing, but that's okay. Uh, they're still on track to sell a lot of cars this year and a lot more next year. So whether or not those come online in Q1 2022 or really start ramping until Q2, I don't think it's that big of a deal compared to if they didn't even have those factories in the first place. So I just see that as added value to the company as a whole. And I think everyone, especially longtime fans, should be excited because this is what we've always been waiting for, just to have multiple factories with these,
Right.
the single casting, and eventually they're going to get to 4680s in those, and that'll be great. But everything under one roof in the big markets that it's required, I think, of course, that's going to be great.
Well, and I don't really think a lot of people understand Tesla really only has one place where you can get a vehicle in the United States today, being Fremont. And Austin's going
Yeah.
to be a magnitude of difference when they are ramping in terms of availability. So I do think, even though we will see what I think is going to be a little bit of a domino effect occur probably in some of the fleets out there with Hertz making the first move, the likelihood is we'll see a lot of rental car fleets starting to move into the EV market, which is going to put some pressure on, guess who, the traditional OEMs out there. How do you think they fare with Hertz making such a dominant move here, which is going to force a lot of other rental companies into doing things like this? And you've got all these fleet potentials. I mean, you're talking probably what was the Ford Taurus, maybe, or maybe something similar
Hmm.
to that in some of the other OEMs that essentially have just been replaced by an electric vehicle. Thoughts on how that could ramp up and how quickly we could see that kind of shift, especially in the major fleets?
I think it took one company to really start this, and that was Hertz. And now, of course, you have to think that Enterprise and every
Yeah.
other big, even Zipcar, some of the smaller ones, they have to be looking at this as we to stay competitive. We need to offer this. And I think for a while, maybe charging infrastructure was a concern or the general public's perception of electric vehicles.
Hmm.
And but now that I mean, 100,000, it's not like they're just dipping their toes in the water with 10,000. This is 100. These are 100,000 electric vehicles. The great thing about Tesla in the United States is that there's no other company that could fulfill this sort of order. I mean, it's not like
Right.
there would be 100,000 bolts on the road.
Yep.
So this is a huge opportunity for Tesla again. And I think that in North America, as others move into this, they're going to have to really do it with Tesla. They're not going to be competitive if they do it with anyone else. And also, no other company in North America can supply that kind of order. So Tesla's in a great spot now, and I think continuing well into the future until real competition comes. But that's not coming for a while here.
Yeah, I think the OEMs are still far enough behind. I mean, Ford, I would say, might had the closest opportunity. Rivian is doing some interesting things, but still being able to keep up with that kind of pace and just the demand we've seen from general population on Tesla. And I think in general, people are trying to get to that. Lucid yet to really deliver any vehicles. Likelihood now, I'm feeling they may not deliver vehicles this year. So there just seems to be all of a sudden a crunch toward the end of the year on all this demand, and you can't find an electric vehicle out there pretty much at all. Even on the used market, trying to find a used market Tesla is almost impossible. You mentioned the 4680. Panasonic unveiled their 4680 type cylindrical battery. This was actually news that broke today, and over on Inside EVs, I believe. Yep, Inside EVs. They kind of break this down. They did a media roundtable, unveiled it today, the prototype of its upcoming new high capacity on the 4680. What kind of role will this have? Do you know anything about this as of yet?
Yeah, this Wall Street Journal broke this. I think that it's great that they are able to be so dynamic with their cylindrical cell capabilities. Uh,
Right.
they didn't say exactly what I was hoping they would say, which is we have successfully tried and tested the
Hmm.
dry battery electrode. because that's really the holy grail to this battery. It still
Right.
could make sense to do it with a wet electrode, but because the tabless design, for example, is brilliant, and the whole structural integrity of this type of cell in the pack is fantastic, of course. But I would have liked to hear more about the details. They said that we were able to do this form factor, not necessarily everything that Tesla is looking for. So it's right now it seems like it's a bigger battery, which is definitely going to pack more power. But uh, I don't know in terms of really scaling this and the cost, because the factory footprint alone was a big point that Elon made at Battery Day of just
Right.
how much of a factory reduction you have by making a dry
Going
battery
dry.
electrode. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm looking for in that. Right now, all I see is that they have been able to make a battery with those dimensions, and I would imagine tabless is factored into that, incorporated
Yeah.
right now. But they didn't. They just they're kind of vague about the wording of it, and they didn't allow anyone to test it, which you typically do. So I think we're just in the really early stages. They also said that they could start really scaling the testing of this next year. So it's not like
Hmm.
we're really close to this. And I think again that's okay. We since Elon got on stage and touted the 4680 and everything, something has changed in the battery space, and that is the rise, the re-rise of the LFP. And I
LFP.
think
Yep.
that's phenomenal. It's the cheapest battery. It's very safe. Granted, it's not as energy dense, but the pack level, volumetric energy density is catching up to cylindricals. And there's no cobalt in it. The raw materials, you don't have to be concerned
Hmm.
about any kind of supply crunch with those. So iron is obviously incredibly abundant. So I think that it's okay that Tesla is maybe taking its time on this 4680, because we have phenomenal cells with some really close partnerships that Tesla is establishing with all the top OEMs.
Yeah. Do you think that though this move with Panasonic is hinting that they are essentially kind of rolling into a much more open-armed side of things when it comes to the EV battery production unit? Meaning, let's go in and invest a lot more. Let's really scale this up. We see the writings on the wall, even though there's only really one major car company
Yeah.
out there that's going in this direction. Do you feel like that's some sort of sign here that's putting some pressure maybe on someone like a BYD or a CATL?
No, I'm not reading too much into it. The relationship between Tesla and Panasonic, of course, has been tumultuous out in Nevada. But it's I think that Panasonic still, of course, wants Tesla to continue buying its 2170s out of that factory, and that would be a big hit to Panasonic if
Hmm.
Tesla were to stop doing that. And Tesla's kind of been shaking the table with respect to battery suppliers, because Elon continues to say that we love battery suppliers. We want to buy all the batteries that we can get. And now they're really inking bigger and bigger deals with CATL. That yeah, I think that this is maybe this was Panasonic's way of kind of saying, hey, we're still here. Please continue, buying our 2170s, and maybe down the road we can help also make 4680s. I think, of course, more batteries on the roads in energy storage, of course, the better. So yeah, I do wonder how much of this has to do with continuing to strengthen the relationship that has kind of weakened between Tesla and Panasonic. But again, I'm not reading too much into it.
Yeah, let's talk about Missy Cummings, who is the well, I guess consultant to the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration. It's her vision, and of course, her and Elon have kind of sparred or jousted a bit in open with the fact that she's not necessarily a big proponent of Tesla's Autopilot situation and kind of where
Right.
Tesla is with NHTSA. There is some speculation out there that NHTSA might try a run at Autopilot. Do you think that's even a possibility that NHTSA would try to do something like that?
Yeah, I do think that it's a possibility. I don't know how exactly it would play out, but the more and more ambitious Tesla gets with releasing this FSD beta on city streets, I think that they're going to run the risk of this uh, really gaining some attention from some of the regulatory bodies.
Right.
And so you have NHTSA and NTSB today both sending letters, very similar letters, to Tesla. And I have to say that as an investor, I don't like it when companies whose stock I hold do not comply with the government. Just said whereas they said in the letter today that all five
Hmm.
other automakers that we reached out to with for the exact same thing. It's not like they're just targeting Tesla in this case.
Right.
They all responded. They were compliant, and Tesla was the only one. That's not. I don't like that. I get the whole bad boy thing and with Elon and all that, but I do not. That causes me some anxiety as an investor in any company. You never want to see that. So I do wish that they'd play by the rules more in this space. And now they really, Missy Cummings is she's a very decorated woman. She's a former fighter pilot, one of the first female fighter pilots. She's well respected in the industry, and she just stepped down from Veoneers, which is the
Right. The
company that
lidar.
she was
Yeah.
on their board, which is yeah. And so it's so that's good to see that she's no more conflict of interest, so to speak. That wasn't a surprise, but now that kind of means that she's definitely in. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's not great for Tesla long term, but it also may hold Tesla more accountable. And I think some fans and investors have wanted to see that for longer than we have been able to. So it's just I don't think that this is good for the FSD part of Tesla, but at the end of the day, Tesla does so many things that it could be just a drop in the bucket. It really investors should ask themselves how much they really ascribe value to Tesla's current market cap with respect to FSD. And if it's more than, let's say, $400 billion, then you should be worried. But if you don't ascribe much at all, then you should be fine.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people would look at it in the sense that it does affect the potential, if in fact it does occur, if we see any kind of regulation coming at the national level, at least for Autopilot, that it does affect at some point the whole idea of robotaxi, which is a long-term, out there goal for Tesla in getting to that level. Obviously, there's got to be a lot of steps that have to go through the process, both in development, testing, and seeing this vehicle actually do it in real world conditions. I know we've got beta out there and there's a lot going on with that, of course. But at the same time, you mentioned that other manufacturers are responding. At least my argument would be this, is that Tesla is so far out in the lead. What is it that the other manufacturers would actually be responding about, other than, yeah, we don't have anything yet. We're working on it. Versus Tesla's made
Basically,
so
just
much.
open. Yeah,
Go ahead.
just opening up everything and sending. So, like for example, with Blue's Cruise, for Ford to send over all documented things that it has on that with whatever their probe was about
Hmm.
with respect to that specific system. And you also I think it's important to look at in China that some of these level 2 ADAS systems. Just last night we saw Xiaopeng's and
Right.
really impressive. I mean, it granted it was maybe doctored or set up a little, but
Hmm.
it is going after the same thing, and so it's not just Tesla in this space. And so a lot of people were wowed. I mean, geez, 5 years ago when I would show people Autopilot, and that was just Autopilot 1 on the
Right.
highway. People are blown away by that. And when the car sees things that the human eye can't see, there's something that just is no humans have experienced that up until that point. So there is that real wow factor, and that's been a huge selling point for Tesla, I'd say. Now other companies have that, and Tesla's just going to have to iterate faster now, and I hope that they do
Yeah.
it in a safe way. But no, that there are other companies, just not in the U.S., but there are other companies in China that have very impressive. You should see ArcFox. I mean, ArcFox is definitely, in my opinion, better than what I've seen from the FSD beta. But who knows? One may be more scalable. One is only available in Asia. So there
Hmm.
are trade-offs. But there are other impressive systems out there for sure.
So Missy Cummings, she deleted her Twitter account, and
I think
there's
she just
been
deactivated it.
okay, all
She
right.
was getting death threats. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's why.
yeah. So again, this the Tesla mob seemed to just like descend on top of this person, and I think that's the concern I have. I'm an avid Tesla fan, but at the same time, I feel like, yes, of course, I'm still very, I won't say skeptical. I'm optimistic but concerned about full self-driving and whether or not we see that in the city street level. Obviously I'm using my full self-driving as it is now, but I'm not using the beta. And even to that extent, I still see just this mass of people who have paid for this, maybe the $10,000 people or some that bought it at $5,000, whatever the fee may be. And I feel like that is the big question if NHTSA were to come in and actually say, hey, we're going to make full self-driving illegal. Or if it was just, you can't use full self-driving on city streets, which would essentially kind of stop innovation with Tesla and allow pretty much every other OEM out there to catch up. Did you see Sandy Munro's video?
Yeah, I did.
He was going off.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as he sometimes does. With FSD, with the crackdown that could happen, I actually don't think that they could just outright ban it. I mean, sure, maybe they could. I don't think that's likely though. I think if anything, what I've seen and what I know that Missy Cummings is really into with Tesla is the language around calling
Right.
it full self-driving when it's
Self-driving,
not,
yeah.
calling it
Yeah.
autopilot. I mean, she's a pilot and she knows what an autopilot system is, and she's like, this is not autopilot. I understand that. And I think that the messaging has been very misleading. And I think that maybe Tesla will have to change that. We've seen that in Germany already. But I don't think that they're actually trying to, because the systems do make the cars safer when the driver is actively monitoring it. It just, that's fundamentally, they do.
Sure.
However, there are definitely times that you and I have both experienced where the car does crazy things. And that's what separates Tesla from, being a level 2 to a level 3 or a level 4 or a level 5.
Right.
So, for what it does, I think right now it does really well. Now they're really pushing the envelope with this beta. And I do worry that they may push it just too far. But I don't know what's going to really bring the House of Cards down, if anything will. I think it's just going to be maybe tiptoeing around as best they can while the neural nets really, power up and everything, and Dojo starts to really infiltrate a lot of the issues that they're having. But no, I don't think that we're looking at a complete just removal of it. And then you have it in different countries. Of course, the take rate's highest in the United States, but
Sure.
some of these other countries would be very interesting to see what everyone's looking to the United States to figure out what they should do. And I just don't think that there have been as many issues. Now, what I do have issues with is thinking that this is a robo-taxi capable vehicle. I fundamentally believe, I know it's on your show before, that it lacks the hardware to do so. But for what it does right now, I think it does a very good job.
Yeah, and I think what we've continued to stress here as we've looked at it is that it's really, the reality is, early on I was very, I think I was very, at least to a certain, I had a certain amount of expectations of where Elon was. Obviously, after seeing it in real life, utilizing it for quite some time now, the potential is there. It's just probably not there as quickly as we had considered or had hoped for. With that being the case, when you look at where Tesla is today, based on let's just say full self-driving as it is without beta, just you have full self-driving, you can get it in the the subscription model, you've purchased it. Do you feel that's good enough for Tesla to continue moving on? Maybe full self-driving city streets, the beta that they're working on, gets maybe delayed and or pushed back for, say, 2, maybe 3 years. What kind of impact would that have on Tesla?
It depends how that comes out, but I think that's a very likely scenario, because there is a ton of value in just, remember they had EAP, enhanced autopilot, and then they had, the terminology is quite confusing for a lot of people. They've gone through auto steer plus, then navigate on autopilot, navigate on autopilot city streets. That's what's really in beta right now. And I think that's the last step of what Tesla has been promising that it will one day deliver. It's just the city streets. And so if you look at it and you see that they say, and they recognize the deferred revenue now on navigate on autopilot on the highway, that's still not perfect. So if they're considering that that's done, then completed, then I don't know at what level it's going to take for them to do the same with navigate on Autopilot on city streets. But then we're not that far away if it's not
Yeah.
going to be perfect. That's the difference here. It's either going to be perfect or it's not. And I think it's okay to really kind of take a step back and say, all right, we've delivered what we've promised the whole time with the city streets. Now let's move on to maybe a bit more beefed up computer and vehicle with more cameras. I mean, a lot of people who have the beta are saying that they think it needs at least more cameras. They're not necessarily saying that it needs LiDAR or millimeter wave radar, but they're saying it does need more cameras because there are blind spots. It cannot see around certain things. So that's going to have to happen. It's not like Tesla's just going to magically, through a neural net, going to see things that it can't see. That's not how it works. So I do think there's going to have to be a hardware refresh, so to speak. And I think that that would be the best thing for me to see Tesla do, and kind of acknowledge that, all right, we have some fantastic cars as is right now, and they could be in fleets similar to robotaxis, just we'll still have the driver, but maybe the driver doesn't have to be as qualified or something, but they're still there just as a safety, backup. And then they really come out with a real robotaxi that they've spent a long time. I mean, it's not configured with enough ports or screens in the back seat, like things that other robotaxis actually have. It doesn't have that yet. So even cabin-facing cameras, the ability to clean them really quickly. I mean, those are all things that the door, what if you don't shut the door all the way? These are things that they need to incorporate into a robotaxi specific model. And I think when they do that, that will be a fantastic opportunity. And I would say Tesla will probably win that race long term.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think the hope and the desire, I think, of the Tesla nation out there has been very much thinking that their Model 3 or their Model Y or whatever is going to be able to actually engage some sort of robotaxi, capability. After last year, when I saw the delays continuously happening around full self-driving, that was when my skepticism started to rise, and I simply said, we are quite a ways away from this now. It's whether Elon wants to admit that or not, the reality is real, and it just is. Now, I give Tesla kudos for getting as far as they've come. I mean, what they've done so far is absolutely mind-boggling. So I think holding on this for safety purposes, even though I do argue, and I would agree with Sandy Munro to a certain extent, there's a ton of cars out there on the road right now that have severe safety problems that aren't nearly getting the ire of the federal government that Tesla's getting. I get to drive one of them. It's a BMW, and it has tremendous problems with safety issues that I continuously I'm just blown away. There's a brand new 2020 BMW. I'm just blown away by just little things that should be and can be very dangerous to drive. So with that being the case, I don't know that perfection is going to be in this scenario, even though the neural net's going to be a potential constant change and being able to improve on Autopilot, especially to the next level. But I do, and I would agree with you, Autopilot still needs a little bit of work, even just general Autopilot, or full self-driving, even Autopilot to a certain extent, because you still get those ghost braking scenarios, but even full self-driving to a certain extent, doing just standard entry and exit on-ramp, off-ramps are still a little bit challenging for full self-driving, in my experience of driving the vehicle all the time and seeing that. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, I'm so glad that we have seen so much movement with Hertz jumping into this. I think the bigger issue here, and I think a lot of people get lost in this, this is an electrification of the automotive fleet of the planet. That's the bigger issue. Sure, we're going to get to robotic aspects of it, autonomy and all those kind of things, but we're there right now. When it comes just a good EV, plug it in, charge it, it goes for a long while, and there's not a lot of maintenance. You've got no emissions. All those kinds of things that really Elon started the company with are here, and they're working.
Yeah, and I think that's what you have to take a step back and look at with respect to the full self-driving. How many people who currently own a Tesla bought it with the hope that that was the sole reason, that because Elon said this at Autonomy Day? I think that they bought it for all the reasons you just named. And so and look at Hertz. Yeah, they bought 100,000 of these, not because they think these are one day going to be robotaxis. I mean, if that were the thinking, then I should probably have a talk with them. But no, it's just because they're phenomenal products, right? They're the
Yeah.
best products you can buy on this market. So that's why people buy it. It's not for the full self-driving. It's just another added thing.
Yeah, for sure. I want to just do a quick drop in on the chart just to give you guys an example of what's happened over the past couple of quarters. Here in Q1, sentiment on Tesla was holding at 73.02. Amplification, which is where people are basically talking about it. It's kind of that network effect. 69.71. It moved up in Q2 to 71.18. Dropped a little bit actually, but you look here at Q3, sentiment skyrocketed to 75.88 and amplification flipped, which we score this on the channel a lot in cryptocurrency and blockchain using our, basically it's an IQ system for sentiment around natural language processing of key terms, meaning Tesla, self-driving, full self-driving, etc. Hertz jumps in, we see this jump up, and we pulled this sentiment this morning, 75.88 and an amplification of 76.19. What that tells me, Taylor, is this. If you have amplification going up, so the network effect is in play right now with Tesla's stock, and it's now trading at over $1,000 as we literally have been on the show. It cracked $1,000. How far do you think this takes the stock? And do you think this is a short-term bump?
It could be a short-term bump. I mean, this is a $90 billion bump. You don't really see that too often. And so I don't know if this is going, if you're talking maybe 3 months out, then sure, maybe this is just a near-term thing. But if we're looking 2 years out, 3 years out, I think this continues to get legs and keep running. The thing that I'm still, a Tesla shareholder, but I just see more opportunities in other companies that have lower valuations that can catch up to even half of what Tesla's is. That's where I see more opportunity, but it doesn't mean that I'm still against Tesla. It's great to see it have this run. I just don't think that it's going to be a $1 trillion company in the next 2 years, whereas I think other companies could have that kind of 5x. So I do think that it has legs.
Yeah, has a lot of similarities to the cryptocurrency market, in the sense of Tesla is Bitcoin and all these other companies are altcoins, and there's, those potential gains are there. But anyway, all right, so Taylor, thanks again for stopping in on the show today. It's been great having you back. Always fun talking Tesla.
Thank you so much,
and
Paul.
battery tech for sure. Thanks again, of course. Yeah, it's going to be. So if you guys are tuned in over on the podcast, make sure and, give us some kudos over there. We love that. And I'm glad that while you're out there driving in your electric vehicle, you can pop your podcast on and listen to TechPath. But if you want to see a lot of the charts and some of our analysis and breakdowns, get over here to the YouTube channel. Make sure and subscribe. And if you want to hit me up on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.